There's a reason Sigma empaths always seem to attract the ones who are lost, damaged, or emotionally unavailable. It's not weakness, it's resonance. Their calm energy calls to chaos like a lighthouse calls to ships in the dark. The broken ones don't see the empath's soul. They see a mirror that reflects what they wished they could be. First, the Sigma empath believes they were sent to heal these people. They listen, they absorb, they give until they start fading themselves. But healing the wrong person feels like trying to fill a void that keeps expanding. And one day they finally realize something life-changing. Not everyone who's drawn to your light wants to stand in it. Some just want to borrow it to find their way back to the darkness. This video isn't about blame. It's about awakening, about the moment a Sigma empath stops carrying broken souls and begins carrying their own peace. Because once they understand that empathy without limits is self-destruction, everything changes. If you've ever felt drained from loving too deeply, this is your reminder. Your light is sacred, and it was never meant to be everyone's home. Subscribe for more stories about self-healing, boundaries, and emotional strength. And tell me in the comments, have you ever loved someone who mistook your empathy for endless repair? Their calm feels like safety, and safety attracts the unstable. There's something magnetic about a Sigma empath's calm. It doesn't demand attention, it invites it. Their energy feels like still water in a world full of storms. When they walk into a room, they don't need to speak to be felt. Their presence alone carries a kind of peace that people who live in chaos crave. To the unstable or emotionally wounded, that serenity feels like home, but it's also what begins the imbalance. For the broken soul, chaos is familiar. It's all they've ever known. When they meet someone who doesn't mirror that noise, it feels both soothing and terrifying. The Sigma empath becomes their anchor, their emotional safe zone. They pour their trauma, fears, and self-doubt into the empath who absorbs it all, believing they're helping. But over time, this exchange stops being healing and starts being draining. The empath slowly becomes the emotional regulator in someone else's storm, forgetting their own peace in the process. At first, the broken person mistakes that balance for love, because the Sigma empath listens without judgment, forgives without condition, and understands without words. But soon, the dynamic shifts. The more peace the empath offers, the more chaos they attract. Because to someone addicted to dysfunction, calm feels foreign, even threatening. Eventually, the empath begins to notice the pattern. The same peace that drew others in is now being used against them. Their calm becomes a canvas for projection, every silence misunderstood, every boundary resisted. And that's when the empath finally understands. They were never meant to save everyone who finds comfort in their light. Some people are drawn to your peace not because they value it, but because they need somewhere to hide from their own storms. The Sigma empath's true power comes when they realize that not everyone deserves access to their calm, because peace is sacred, and once you let the wrong person into it, chaos becomes contagious. They absorb pain without showing it, becoming an unwilling refuge. A Sigma empath doesn't need words to feel what others carry. They sense it through tone, energy, even silence. They walk through life like emotional sponges, absorbing every unspoken wound around them. When someone they care about is in pain, they don't just understand it, they feel it, like an echo reverberating through their chest. But the world rarely notices because Sigma empaths are masters of composure. They smile softly, listen deeply, and hide the weight they carry behind calm eyes. People are drawn to that steadiness. They see someone who never wavers, who absorbs chaos and still stands tall. So without realizing it, they start using the empath as a safe dumping ground for their emotions, their grief, their anger, their confusion. And the Sigma empath, with their quiet compassion, takes it all in, not because they have to, but because they can't help it. Their instinct is to heal, to make others feel seen, understood, and grounded. But what no one sees is the silent toll it takes. Late at night, when the world is quiet, the empath finally feels the weight of everything they've absorbed, heartbreaks that aren't theirs, fears they never created, and sadness they didn't deserve. They replay conversations in their head, not to judge, but to process the emotions they never had time to release. And yet, when morning comes, they rise with the same calm, pretending they're untouched. It's not strength that keeps them steady, it's survival. They've learned that showing pain only invites more of it. So they build an invisible refuge inside themselves, carrying everyone else's storms in silence. But every refuge has limits. Over time, the weight becomes too heavy, and the empath starts to fade emotionally, mentally, spiritually. The turning point comes when they realize something crucial. Healing doesn't mean absorbing someone else's suffering. It means holding space without losing yourself in it. That's when the Sigma empath begins to shift. From being an emotional refuge to being a mirror. They stop taking in pain and start reflecting it back with wisdom and boundaries. Because true empathy isn't carrying someone's burden, it's reminding them they can learn to carry their own. And once the empath learns that, their silence no longer hides exhaustion, it radiates power. Their quiet strength draws people who want rescue, not recovery. Sigma empaths have a kind of strength that doesn't shout, it whispers through presence. It's the way they remain steady when everyone else is unraveling, how they offer comfort without words, and how their eyes seem to say, "You're safe here." That calm confidence becomes a lifeline for those who feel lost or broken. But while it draws people in, it also attracts a dangerous pattern, individuals who crave rescue more than change. To someone in chaos, the Sigma empath's energy feels like oxygen. They see in the empath a promise that maybe this person will finally save them from their inner storm. They lean in, desperate for relief, and the empath, driven by compassion, opens their heart wider. They become the healer, the listener, the emotional anchor. But what starts as empathy soon becomes emotional labor. The broken soul clings, not to grow, but to survive off the empath's stability. The empath notices it slowly, in the exhaustion that follows every conversation, in the silence where their needs go unheard. They start to feel invisible in their own relationships, not because they're unloved, but because they've become someone's emotional lifeline. Their strength, once their power, becomes their prison. But something shifts when they finally understand the truth. Not everyone who seeks light wants to leave the darkness. Some just want to rest in someone else's glow. And that's when the Sigma empath begins to reclaim themselves. They stop being the rescuer and start being the revealer, showing others their own capacity to heal. This moment is liberation. The empath learns that true strength isn't about saving others, it's about refusing to drown with them. Their quiet strength remains, but now it's guarded, not as a wall, but as a boundary. A reminder that compassion must begin with the self, because when a Sigma empath chooses not to rescue, they finally create space for genuine recovery, both for themselves and for those ready to rise beside them. They show boundless compassion, which entices those who've burned bridges. Sigma empaths have a rare kind of compassion, one that feels pure, unconditional, and almost otherworldly. They don't just offer understanding, they radiate it. Their empathy isn't performative or selective, it's steady, quiet, and real. The kind that makes even the most guarded person feel seen again. And for people who've burned bridges, lost trust, or been rejected for their behavior, that kind of acceptance feels intoxicating. It's the first warmth they've felt in a long time, and that's exactly why it becomes dangerous. The broken, the manipulative, and the emotionally unavailable are drawn to the Sigma empath's light like moths to a flame. They sense that no matter what they've done, the empath will listen. The empath will forgive. The empath will understand what no one else could. At first, it feels like redemption, the chance to rewrite their own story through someone's unconditional kindness. But what starts as connection often turns into dependency. The empath becomes the emotional shelter for people running from their own storms. They hear confessions that sound like apologies, promises that sound like change, and because they see potential in everyone, they believe it until the pattern repeats. The same person they tried to heal begins to drain them, testing their limits in small, almost invisible ways. The empath starts to feel responsible for holding everything together, for being the stability in someone else's chaos. But there's a moment, quiet yet powerful, when the empath finally sees the truth. They realize that compassion without boundaries isn't love, it's self-sacrifice, that not everyone who finds their light deserves to stay in it. Some people don't want forgiveness, they just want freedom from accountability. So the Sigma empath does what no one expects. They close the door, not in anger, but in peace. They learn that protecting their compassion doesn't make them cold, it makes them wise. Because true empathy isn't letting everyone in, it's knowing who can walk beside your heart without breaking it. And once they understand that, their kindness becomes sharper, not in cruelty, but in clarity. Their compassion remains boundless, but no longer for the undeserving. That they try to fix through presence, until they learn presence isn't enough. Sigma empaths believe deeply in the quiet power of presence. They don't rush to solve your pain with words, they sit beside it. When someone's world falls apart, the empath doesn't offer cliches or advice, they offer stillness. Their calm becomes an anchor in someone else's storm. They think if they stay long enough, love deep enough, and listen hard enough, they can somehow repair what's broken. And for a while, it feels like it's working. People open up, tears fall, wounds surface, and the empath holds it all without judgment. But what the Sigma empath doesn't realize at first is that presence alone can't heal someone who has no desire to heal themselves. They can light a candle in the dark, but they can't force anyone to walk toward it. They can lend strength, but they can't live another person's transformation. And that's where the quiet heartbreak begins. Over time, they start to notice the pattern, how some people don't grow after being seen, they simply become dependent on being seen. They come to the empath not to change, but to be comforted in their stagnation. The empath's energy becomes their medicine, their distraction, their emotional shelter, but never their motivation. And soon, the empath starts to fade. Their once grounded peace begins to shake under the weight of everyone else's unhealed pain. They give and give until their own soul feels dim. Then comes the moment of awakening, not through anger, but exhaustion. The Sigma empath finally understands that presence without boundaries is self-erasure, that their light was meant to guide, not to carry. They realize love isn't about being endlessly available, it's about being intentional. True healing happens when both people meet halfway, not when one person stands still while the other keeps taking. So they change. They don't stop showing up. They just stop overextending. They no longer sit in every storm hoping to calm it. Instead, they build peace within themselves and let others choose whether they're ready to match it. Their presence remains powerful, but now it's reserved for those who also bring light. Because the Sigma empath has finally learned the truth. Sometimes walking away isn't giving up. It's the most compassionate act of all. They mistake loyalty for progress, holding on longer than they should. Sigma empaths love deeply, not impulsively, but with conviction. When they care for someone, it's never halfway. They see potential where others see flaws and believe that loyalty, patience, and love can transform even the most damaged connection. That's why they stay long after the red flags have turned into warning sirens. They tell themselves they're being faithful, compassionate, committed. But in reality, they're trying to prove that their loyalty can rewrite someone else's nature. At first, this loyalty feels noble. They see the good in people even when that goodness hides behind pain. They think, if I can love them right, maybe they'll heal. And for a time, that illusion gives them purpose. They hold on through the arguments, the distance, the cold apologies. They become the emotional backbone of a relationship that's already falling apart, mistaking endurance for growth. But what they don't see yet is that their loyalty has become a form of self-abandonment. Every time they forgive without change, they teach the other person that their heart is disposable. Every time they stay when it hurts, they tell themselves that pain equals progress. But one day, something shifts. The Sigma empath wakes up, not because of a fight, but because of silence. They realize they're the only ones still trying, still hoping, still carrying the emotional weight. The clarity hits like a quiet earthquake. Loyalty without reciprocity isn't devotion, it's self-destruction. That's when they begin to detach, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. They understand now that true loyalty is never meant to trap you. It's meant to align you with people who also choose you. They learn that leaving isn't betrayal, it's balance. Because real loyalty starts with being loyal to your own peace, your own growth, your own truth. When the Sigma empath finally lets go, it's not dramatic, it's surgical. They don't burn bridges, they simply stop walking toward them. And that's when the transformation begins. Their loyalty doesn't disappear, it just finds a new direction, inward, toward self-respect, self-worth, and the realization that love should never be proven through suffering, only reflected through peace. Healing begins when they make boundaries non-negotiable. For most of their lives, Sigma empaths mistake kindness for openness. They believe love means access, that compassion means availability. Every time someone needs them, they answer. Every time someone crosses a line, they rationalize it. They tell themselves they're being understanding, when in truth, they're being drained. But healing begins the moment they stop apologizing for needing peace. It's when maybe later turns into no, and I understand becomes that's not okay. At first, this shift feels unnatural. They've spent years believing boundaries are walls, not bridges. Saying no feels cold, distancing feels cruel, yet as they start enforcing limits, something unexpected happens. Their world grows quieter, lighter, freer. The people who only came for comfort disappear, while the ones who respect them stay. And for the first time, the empath realizes boundaries don't push people away, they filter them. It's a transformation that's more internal than external. The Sigma empath begins noticing subtle peace in their body, the absence of anxiety after saying no, the stillness after choosing themselves. They stop over-explaining their boundaries to those who benefited from crossing them. They understand that empathy without limits isn't virtue, it's self-neglect dressed as love. True compassion requires discernment, not sacrifice. Every boundary becomes a declaration of self-respect. No stops being a rejection, it becomes protection. The empath learns that saying no to others is often saying yes to their own healing. They realize not everyone deserves their emotional energy, only those who reciprocate it with care, not consumption. As the Sigma empath grows into this new version of themselves, they no longer confuse peace with loneliness. Their silence becomes sacred, their space becomes intentional, and their energy becomes valuable. Healing, they learn, doesn't always come from giving. Sometimes it's found in the refusal to keep giving what was never appreciated. And in that stillness, they reclaim their true power, compassion with boundaries, empathy with backbone, and love that no longer requires self-betrayal to exist. True recovery starts when they reinvest their care back into themselves. For so long, the Sigma empath's love has been a one-way current, flowing outward endlessly, selflessly, beautifully, and destructively. They've poured themselves into everyone else's pain, healing others while quietly decaying inside. Their empathy became both their gift and their curse, a mirror that reflected everyone's wounds except their own. But true recovery begins the day they finally turn that mirror inward, not to criticize, but to care. It starts in the quiet moments when they no longer rush to check on others, but pause to ask themselves, how do I feel today? It's subtle at first. They take a walk not to clear someone else's energy, but to reconnect with their own. They listen to music that calms them, not that reminds them of someone they lost. Slowly, they begin redirecting all that healing energy back home where it always belonged. They learn that self-care isn't selfish, it's sacred. That rest isn't laziness, it's repair. And for the first time, they begin to see themselves as someone worthy of the same tenderness they've always given so freely. The empathy that once kept them trapped in others' chaos now becomes their medicine. They start writing again, painting again, dreaming again, doing things not to fix others, but to rediscover themselves. Of course, recovery isn't glamorous. It's lonely, sometimes painful. They grieve the version of themselves that kept breaking to keep others whole. But beneath that grief grows something unshakable: self-trust. The Sigma empath realizes they don't need to earn love by overgiving. Their worth was never conditional. Their care doesn't have to be currency, it can be devotion, directed inward. And that's when everything changes. Their boundaries solidify, not from fear, but from self-respect. Their compassion deepens, but now it flows from abundance, not depletion. They no longer chase people to feel needed. They attract those who match their peace. The same energy that once sustained everyone else now fuels their growth, clarity, and purpose. True recovery isn't loud. It's not a comeback or a declaration. It's a quiet revolution that happens within. The moment a signal empath stops bleeding for love and starts blooming for themselves. Because once they pour their care back where it belongs, they don't just heal, they transform into the purest version of strength, peaceful, whole, and finally free. When a Sigma empath finally heals, they don't announce it. They simply move differently, calmer, clearer, untouchable. The same heart that once broke for others now beats with purpose. Their silence speaks louder than any revenge. Their peace becomes their proof, and their new energy attracts only what's meant for their evolution. If you've ever felt drained from giving too much, or if you're in that stage of reclaiming your power, remember this. Recovery isn't about becoming colder, it's about becoming wiser with your warmth. You don't lose your empathy by setting boundaries, you protect it. If this spoke to your soul, hit that subscribe button for more deep psychological insights about emotional intelligence, healing, and the power of self-awareness. And tell me in the comments, have you reached that point where peace finally felt more valuable than people?